Welcome to the Dataliction Podcast. We love taking data, turning it into the right action so that you can help your company grow. We've been talking a lot about AI, and today we're going to talk through leading AI change like every other revolution. Hey, my name's John.
And I'm Travis.
And we're so grateful to be back here again with you. Travis, we've been learning a lot about AI, not just because it's on all of our feeds, but because we have been helping companies grow, expand, whether it's just a team itself, the company as a whole, whether it's from the ground up and then get into an exit, whatever that is. We have seen a lot of change, or to the title, revolutions in business. And so we've become very excited about AI because we're seeing an opportunity, an openness for a lot of companies to then embrace the types of change that we've been seeing for a long time. So, Travis, give a little bit of background. This is not in the notes here, so I'm just going to throw it at you. Give a little bit of background on kind of where, like, some of the early change that you've been part of. One of the reasons I've been so grateful to work alongside you for, I don't know, it's going to be going on a decade here after a while. It's because of all the change you've gone through, successfully, not successfully. You've learned things the hard way. You've learned things the successful way. Super fun. Tell a little bit about how you have learned to love change for businesses.
That's a great question. And how to learn to love change. Well, that's kind of like saying, how do you love to learn pain? But no, here's one of the things, like, as leaders, one of the things as leaders we think about is we're all the time comparing ourselves to others. And we also think that we have to change at the same rate as others. And as leaders, we have to adopt things the same way as others. And I don't think that we fall in that fallacy. And that is that we have to either change at the same speed, we have to adopt the same practices, or we have to think the same way. And that is like telling a child that they have to run a race that is, super long, and they've never walked before. That's like telling a teenager to understand what their career path is by the time, they're 40. And it's like somebody that is a new parent saying, how do you coach them to go to this university? And each one of those examples is the gap is so large.
Yeah, so large.
And they didn't change in little moments along the way. And as leaders, you think, oh, I just watched this, or I just read this, tweet, or I just read this LinkedIn article, and we've got to do that. Yet they didn't step back and say, where is that person in their walk? Where is that person in their business? Where is that person in the life cycle of their product? They never stopped to ask that question. And so they jumped right into it and said, we need to do this. And that's why you need really good guides along the way to help them to understand the change. So I'll give you an example. So I'm working with this business leader, and he's roughly around 3 million in ARR.
Okay. And
he keeps getting up to this 5 million mark, and he keeps, he gets up there, and then the team all of a sudden kind of falters a little bit, and it goes back down, and then he gets back up to the 5 million mark, and the team, something happens. And I said, are you trying to always grow to 5 million? Or are you trying to actually grow the team to 10 to 20? And why that is important, he kept trying to jump a step going from that 5 to 10. And he was like, I'm just trying to get there. And he never was able to really dive into what the core problem was. And his core problem was actually his staff kept saying, well, we don't want to grow any bigger. And so it was almost like self-sabotaging during this point in time.
Did they actually say that?
Well, he did. Like, his staff was not there.
I was about
like,
to say that's very honest of them.
So, but no, he was like, no, they're actually like, we get to this point in time, and they didn't realize that they're actually doing it to themselves. I was like, okay, well, he's like, well, then do I have to let everybody go? It's like, no, you don't have to let everybody go. What you do is just kind of reframe the bus.
Yeah.
Say, put the people that is really good at, like, creating these, processes in place. Like, put them over on the other side and say, well, they don't always have to keep creating the process because the process is already done. That's what they were doing.
I love all of this, Travis. So I'm going to pull us back into this idea of leading the AI change like every other revolution. You've expressed that change is never this binary big flip of a switch where you have your infant that now goes to university. There is a big gap, and it is a systematic step by step process that gets us into these major changes. And two, leaning into this idea of a revolution, revolutions are never started by a single event, but instead they are a build up of one thing into another. But for some reason, we somehow think that AI is this giant flip of a switch. It's a binary change from this over to this, when in fact, the leaders that are successfully leading through this are taking those, step-by-step buildups, again, to the idea of the revolution. 1776 did not happen simply, they didn't just take a boat over to the United States. Obviously, before it was the United States, the colonies, they didn't just show up and be like, yes, we are going to declare independence. It's like, no, it was this big buildup from taxes. I'm looking here, obviously the Boston Tea Party, and then, the First Continental Congress, all these different things. There's so many. My wife's a fifth grade teacher, and I get to hear all these stories that I did not remember. That said, having an expert remind you of all the steps that it takes to get to 1776 is really important. So now let's go back to AI. Let's go back to this change moment, this change movement that we are seeing, similar revolution that we are having across the board. Travis, I love how you have referenced figuring out what does change mean to your organization. And for all of our listeners, to give a little bit of clarity and color, and you can speak into this, everything from batteries to burgers. I think I've heard you say this. Batteries to burgers to health insurance policies and technology, everything in between. If you had used the same principle on how you sold burgers to how you help people get on their health insurance plans, those probably would not have worked. Now, there's some human principles, good business practices, but in terms of changing teams and the personalities of the people, like an insurance advisor and a bicycle delivery person for a burger, those are totally different personality types, different educational, styles and learning, communication. So Travis, let's lean a little bit more into the personalization of change, because in our last episode, we talked about how AI is not one thing. It's 1,000 different things. So then now change is not into AI is not going to be one thing for everybody. It's not one size fits all. So what are the ways that you do, like the buckets you might break down to evaluate how you're unique, the types of questions? Walk us through how you sold burgers and you also sold health insurance plans.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you're asking me to dive deep in some of the archives here.
Yeah.
When selling batteries to burgers, you're absolutely right. People fundamentally have kind of the same root problem. One, for health insurance, they had a need. Same way with burgers or even with batteries during this time, they had a need. We didn't fulfill that market need. But where it came down to like the differences is really the leadership team on what their core focus was. And I really like how each one had kind of a nuance. They had their own personalities. Every business is going to have a little different personality. But how we managed that change was, one, the pace. So every industry was a little bit different. Within the health insurance world, I mean, the pace was a little bit slower. So now we did some really cool, innovative things over the, like 7 years we were doing it. And you had to be pretty nimble. Whereas, when we're doing, an app delivery company, that change of pace was rather frequent. But I really want to lean into is kind of almost the similarities.
Yeah.
So, and that was the willingness to be open-minded.
Mm.
When the team wasn't willing to be open-minded is when things got shut down.
Mm.
And that same way, I was talking about that CEO, it was what's going to be successful for him is how he's being open-minded. And I think that that's the same way for leadership teams right now, being open-minded, just like when you're referencing, our own independence. They didn't want to actually break away. They just wanted to have a better, they just didn't agree with some of the rules that was happening. So if you kind of look back through history, it wasn't like they were all saying, we're going to raise up in arms. I mean, there was many times they were like, let's come up with a peaceful agreement to this. We weren't trying to break out and be the super, super independent country. It was on, hey, how about we cut us a little bit of slack here, because there's no representation that's happening here, and we're being super, super taxed. And Ben Franklin actually was like, guys, don't enter this. Don't. And he was trying to tell King George, don't do this. Yeah. This is not going to be good. And they were trying to hold on to power, and they weren't willing to change. And that's when the greatest revolutions happen, is when finally the pain becomes great enough that the people will rise up and make the change themselves.
Which it's, again, that's the reason I brought this up, is this is a great parallel to the shadow AI we see of employees already using things. And yeah, you teed that up real good, Travis. Justin Trudeau, some of you guys might know that name, you might not, but the quote is great. It says this: the pace of change has never been this fast, yet it will never be this slow again. In the book that both you and I read, Co-Intelligence, he says the AI you use today is the worst you will ever use again. And so I love that principle. I hate that principle because I like learning things and getting good at it. But this is now not learning to be good at a system. It's learning to be good at change, ultimately. And that's tough. It can be scary, but it's also, it's helpful to get more flexible. All the yogis out there know that being flexible is really good for your health. The data there backs it up. Here is something, though, that I wanted to highlight. So back in the early 1900s, electricity reshaped manufacturing. But what's fascinating is that for the first 20 years, we actually saw that productivity dropped for 2 decades with electricity, Travis. Okay. This is not the internet, which was great. Electricity caused a decline in productivity. Well, now if we actually look at the data, we're obviously more quote unquote productive. That's potentially a philosophical question that we could have on a different podcast episode. But that said, the dip. Hey, let's talk about the dip. You and I know this so well, and I'm teeing this up for our conversation as well. So many people are unwilling to embrace change because they know it's going to cost a slight dip. They're not sure how much, but they know it costs a dip to learn something new. So the first principle that I heard from you today so far is be open-minded. The next thing I'm going to say is be aware there is a dip, but embrace it. Talk about the dip, Travis.
Yeah, I love this, John. And where the dip comes from. And so, talk about 20 years, we've also, heard from Alex Hormozy, like there's a 20% dip in productivity when you adopt anything. Guys, you're going to suck at whatever you start at the very beginning. You're going to be the worst you ever are at something when you first start it.
You got to say that one more time for the people in the back.
You're going to suck at doing something for the first time. Don't think that you're going to be a professional at it. And they think, oh, I've got technology that's going to help me. And they're like, well, what type of prompts should I use? And you're just like, oh my goodness, just start using it. Yeah. It's like, but you're going to fumble around. You're like, okay, can I make this report from it? Can I have it summarize this meeting this way? And people who aren't willing to adapt are the ones who are going to be left behind because they weren't willing to put in the time to sit there and actually use it and try to make themselves better. And man, I wish people would hear that. They might say, well, we don't have time. I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to research this. No, you don't have time because you didn't make the time. you had you made the time to watch the Netflix series, or you had the time to maybe, go out and do some shopping, or, whatever, I need to rest and relax. When no, you could have just spent, a couple of minutes, or maybe get up a little bit earlier in the morning, try it out, test it out, see how well, build an agent. I tell people like, hey, well, I'm trying to get in this AI thing. I'm like, go on YouTube, try to figure out one person that you really like, and see if you can build what they're building. Now, I will tell you that there's a lot of fake stuff out there, and it's trash. And we're happy to give you suggestions on like how to build some of these things. But go on there, try it out, try to build some agents, and play around with it. And then you're going to discover, like, I've just discovered a whole bunch of new things that I can use this with. So we're training a new employee right now, and saying, okay, go out there and learn. And now I want you to build. And then, and he's never used AI on some of this stuff. And now I'm like, when you're building, I want you to start thinking about all those things that you can use it in these certain industries. And now it's just copious amounts of notes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, oh, we can use it here. We can do it this way. And like, and it's just amazing rush. So John, I'm going to push back, or not even push back, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on like, how do we like actually start embracing this revolution to where it doesn't have the disruption that, we had back in 1776.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Travis. It's never been easier to be successful, and it's never been easier to be lazy than right now. Alex Hormozi said that. I did not come up with that myself. That said, it is an amplifier moment for us to understand. So as we are open-minded and we're learning, and then we are willing to embrace the 20% dip, I think that the third thing that I'm going to talk about is the amplifier that we're about to see, the magnifying glass of our team, to see who are the people that are excited about a successful mission together, and those people that are just dead weight. And this is uncomfortable but helpful for leaders. And so as we approach this, understanding that everyone's got to just put it all on the table, we're all going to, play poker with the cards facing up, and then just see what's it being dealt, and let's work together to get everybody, that's my analogy is broken down now, Travis. That said, AI is not different than any other change we've gone through in the United States and in the world. It is change. It's a technology change. It's the wheel. It's the car. It's electricity. It's the internet. It's now AI. Very exciting. Thrilled to be part of this moment in history. Nervous on which side I end up on of this discussion. But that said, it is here and it is now. So leaders who are bold and willing to embrace their team and willing to embrace change together, those are the ones that will be able to be what has already made them succeed times 10. Like, businesses that exist today exist because they've done a good job at something. You figure out what that good job is that they've been doing. You use AI to help enhance and augment that. You use AI to magnify the problems that you didn't realize. You fix the problems. You enhance the special things about you. You are going to 10x over the next, however long. I'm not going to make any promises. That's exciting. If you're not excited about that, you need to stop letting people make you afraid. People that try to make you afraid are trying to control you and probably try to make money off of you. Be excited about it, be educated about it, and then take your next step.
Yeah, John, here I want to add, this is something very practical a leader can take away today, is instead of going to your next meeting and saying, how should we use AI today? You should be asking very specific questions on how are you using ChatGPT? What agents are you building? And what processes should we think about improving? But first, literally ask, instead of saying how to use AI, ask your team very specific questions on what platforms that they're using it in and how they are using it. And it's just saying AI, because what people get nervous about, and you as a leader also have to make sure that they feel very comfortable as a team, that they can show their cards, like you said in poker, and not have fear of a repercussion of like, oh, well, my job can just be replaced now.
Mm.
And as long as they're not fearful, your team won't grow if they're all scared of using it and they're secretly using shadow AI in the background. They're kind of like using it and they're never telling you. They're never telling the boss, well, I actually made that report in ChatGPT today, and that strategy, that was actually my LLM that used that. Well, okay, well maybe you could have said, I spent like an hour working with my bot, or however you want to call it. And here's what it came up with. And then you had it, like, you're not being replaced, because you got to think about it in this way. It's not a tool that is going to solve all problems. It just helps you makes you go a little faster, a little bit, and a little bit more knowledge.
Yeah, you would never get upset at your accountant for using a spreadsheet.
Right.
Period. And so we have to understand it is a new tool for us to do productive things. Travis, there's someone that I know that has their work computer, and then they have their personal computer, of which the work computer is keystroked and everything's on there so they can see what's happening. He's not allowed to use AI, so he's using AI on his personal computer right next to his other computer to code and do all these different things, because it's very helpful for him to accomplish, the goal. And the current company he's working for is not allowing any sort of AI augmentation, and that's unhelpful. I will push back to you, Travis, push back on you, that I actually think that asking what AI tools you're using is not the most helpful question. I think it's part of the conversation of just making sure everyone's open and like, hey, what are you using? Like, we want to be helpful and like learn, let's collaborate. People approach it as AI first instead of business first. And so there's two questions, if I'm going to give two lanes right out of the gate, and this is across each key business area of every successful organization. But the first thing is, if we could do this business metric times 10, what business metric times 10 makes the greatest revenue impact on us? And then what business metric, negative 10, like, so where's the inefficiencies? Where are the positive things? For example, I'll give just a hypothetical thing. And I've spent a lot of time in marketing and sales, so I'll use a marketing and sales metric. Your time of lead, like when you get a lead in to when that lead gets quoted, it gets a successful quote, and there's a lot of steps in between. Let's say it's 20 days or something. If hey, the faster we get those quotes to the prospect in a personalized way, we're going to increase conversions, we're going to increase, actual bookings, anything like that. Well, then if you build AI tools around that metric, because if we make that metric change, we're going to bring more revenue in the door, then you go find an AI tool to fix that problem, to help with that situation. Or then if it's going to be margins, let's say it's business expenses, okay? Like, hey, we don't know how much value an AE is actually bringing in because they go on the road and then like all of their expenses are in arrears, so we never know like where we're at. If you can automate the receipt process, the calculation process, all of those sorts of things to help figure out the margin per AE, that's potentially some more. I don't prefer margin. I prefer increasing revenues, but that's just me. So Travis, does that make sense on like ask business questions first, then ask according to those business answers, find the AI tools?
Yeah, so I think you're actually 3 steps ahead of the process, and I do agree with you, but I think you're further down the road than what you're giving other people.
I think people should be already asking those questions in general.
I think they should be too, but like as what I'm seeing right now in the leadership circles, like for some of these people, they're still just scared to say they're using ChatGPT.
That is so sad.
And like, they're just like, yeah, I use it sheepishly. And then, and they think they're going to get replaced.
They're treating it like Wikipedia.
Yeah, they're just, yeah, I should look at the stats on Wikipedia, how it's just plummeting right now, in terms of like people not certain, like actually going on there, and like they're in a world of hurt.
You know what I'm talking about though? Like back in the day, we were allowed to say we Googled it, but we weren't ever allowed to say we Wikipedia'd it.
Yeah, and I mean, but it's the same way. So I think you're absolutely right. I think that's probably the next like phase of a leadership team, but purely just naming some of it and trying to get to the heart of it and making normalized.
I like normalizing it. Yeah.
So like for example, so I see a therapist. I love my therapist. It's amazing, but in that conversation, people are like, "Oh, is that kind of weird?" Do you see something? Like, no, you have a coach. Like, I have a business coach. Like you have like sports teams have coaches. You don't find that weird, because that it starts to normalize these things. And so that's what I'm trying to get to is they're trying to normalize the conversation to get everybody bought in.
That's great. No, I 100% affirm that. I appreciate the clarity on and kind of the back and forth on that. You are 100% correct. Is that as much as we know that AI exists, we're unwilling to admit we are one of the people that actually uses it.
Yeah, it's kind of like, oh man, you're looking really good today. Well, I've actually been, working out and stuff, but you're not just going out there and admitting that you're on Slim Fast or something like that. So
Slim Fast.
I know. I'm showing my age at the moment.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're talking about the internet. So
yeah. So let's go back.
Travis, I appreciate all this. Let's wrap it up for this episode here. One of the biggest pitfalls that I'm just going to make sure and give another thing that leaders can take away. AI is not plug and play, period. AI is not a 30-day ramp, period. You try to go buy some AI tool, ramp it up in 30 days, expect a quick win, you're going to lose, period. And will you maybe randomly see some sort of like uptick or something? Yes, but it's not causal. Correlation is not causality. Just because people get excited to do something and then all of a sudden you see an uptick in activity and all these things, that is not going to be because of the AI. It takes a long time, takes, 6 to 12 months. Unapologetically, Travis, we've built out our program specifically for that, but that's because we've done change before across industries, across companies. This is just a change moment. Mm-hmm. And if you do change wrong, you'll actually do more harm than you will good in terms of helping your team actually stay healthy and stay growing because they're healthy. Does that make sense?
That makes 100%. And, there's a reason why CEOs stand up in the middle of a room and say, wow, these guys have been able to make change with our staff the smoothest it's ever been, and implementing that. And people continue to shake their heads and be like, why is that? It's because we empathize with people and we understand that there's different walks. And one of the biggest pitfalls that we also do in change management is that we leave departments out. And by thinking that AI is just a technology play would so undermine the work of the whole organization when it's a tool that's been used for all and in all aspects of the business. And so I think that that's the other biggest pitfall is that we just think, oh, it's just IT that should be implementing this instead of, no, it's finance, it's HR, it's sales and marketing, it's our customer service team that all are integrated and we all have a voice. And those teams that think, oh, well, we're just going to silo it and then we're going to roll it out and implement it. Guess what? You didn't have 3/4 of the team that was actually on board with it, and they're going to undermine it. And they might not outright say that I'm undermining this. They're subconsciously going to do that. They're going to say little things, and they're just not going to use it. Oh well, it kind of works, and now you just undermine the whole project. And that's why it's so important to have a plan and a process in place, and you can't outsource it to your intern.
Oh my goodness. No, you cannot. Travis, that was beautifully said. Thank you so much. Our call to action. Sign up for a free 30-minute AI readiness consultation. We just started those here recently. Go to our website. You can sign up. You can actually book it. We actually have some questions to kind of get you ready to go for that meeting. So it's a substantial, good meeting. If we talk beyond that, that's, we can figure it out then. But that said, you owe it to yourself to sit down with us, have a conversation about AI readiness, what things we could see you maybe doing, maybe not doing. Sometimes the best things are the edit, Travis, not the addition. And so anyway, that said, Dataliction.com, sign up for our newsletter on LinkedIn. But until next time, again, you've been listening to the Dataliction Podcast, where you have me. My name's John.
And I'm Travis.
And we're going to keep taking data, turn it into action, and that action into growth.